what I want to share with you today, I think, is based on the work that I've done through my life so far. So I started off as a lawyer. That's my first job. That was a long time ago. Then I left law quite quickly. So within legal practice, when I got called to the bar, I did a bit of family law and things like that. So I worked a bit with families. Then I started to teach. So I've taught in the local public education system here in MOE schools for about 10 years. So I've taught from primary school all the way to JC students, 18 years old. Then? Oh, okay, sure. If I can walk around. So I've also taught, so like 6-year-olds to 18-year-olds for 10 years. So after I did that is when I started to become a psychologist. So the psychologist journey started in Canada. That's where I did my training. And I worked with the forensic population, so people who commit crimes but also have mental illness. And that's what I did when I came back. So I worked at our prisons, and then I worked at IMH. I don't know if you're familiar. So that's the Institute of Mental Health. It's the only one we have in Singapore anyway. Then I started my practice 2 years ago on my own. So the reason for telling you my long life story is to also tell you, I think, and reassure you that I've seen youths, I've seen young people, I've seen families. I work a lot with couples in the past 2 years. And so what I want to share, I think, today is what I've learned from those things. And obviously, I think what I've learned in the books, you're not so interested because you can go read that on your own. You probably know more than I do. But real life experiences to me are much more valuable. So when Preeti told me, we want to have a sharing on navigating marital challenges, I was thinking of how to start, and I wanted to start this way. So every time a couple comes to me for a session, I'll tell them the first session is 90 minutes minimum, because usually it's 60 minutes, because there are two of you. As long as there's more than one person in any situation, there's more complexities, right? Whether it's a friend, whether it's a child, whether it's a person that you're working with. And I think that sets up, for me, the foundation to how to approach the couple when they come in. So what kind of challenges are we talking about? Sometimes it's as simple as, why do conflicts even happen? I mean, I'm married and I know that happens. Hopefully not too much, but there are times when it happens quite a lot, and I have to ask, okay, why is this happening, right? And I found that, the reasons can be as simple as just not being able to cope with stress, right? And when you work from home, since COVID started and all of that, you think about how the space, the physical space that you share with someone, your spouse, the kids as well, if you have kids, there is that small space. It doesn't matter how big the house is, it's a small space because you're both with each other 24/7. And as romantic as that sounds on paper and in the movies, it's not so romantic when you have to see the person 7 days a week. So sometimes when couples come in and say, we just get in each other's faces, it does happen. So it's as simple as I like to tell my couples when they come in, just little boundaries, right? So you've got your space, wife, husband has his or her space. You want to, I think, be quite protective, not in the sense of saying, get out, don't come in, but like when there are working hours to say, so during these working hours when I'm having a meeting, unless it's super urgent, WhatsApp, otherwise, maybe just try not to come in. So it's easier a bit, how to not get in that person's space. Same rule applies for kids, but I guess with kids it's a little bit more difficult. Home-based learning was hard for them. It was hard for the parents as well. Everybody had to find how to navigate all these IT stuff that was going on all of a sudden, and that's hard. But boundaries, as difficult as they are, I think, to start practicing personally and professionally, I found that they are very helpful. When I say boundaries, my clients tend to get scared. They say, oh, you're telling me to reject my partner and say, leave. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying to practice for this time, let's, do our own thing, and then we can come back later. And at least when we come back later, we are both focused on spending time with each other, rather than I've got to, manage my work, and then I've got to manage you, and the kids are, and so many things. Helper maybe is having problems. So that's really what I meant by boundaries, not to reject anyone, but to, I think, sort of demarcate space when you need to. So coping with stress. Sometimes the couples come in and they say, but it's the way she talks to me or he talks to me, right? Say, okay, tell me about the way you talk to each other. Say, no, I don't mean it. It just comes out that way. How many times would I have said that, I'm sure. So when you think about it's not, I always think it's not what is said, but how it's said, isn't it? And tone can be so important. Sometimes a wrong smile at the wrong time just finishes everything, right? Or the wrong laugh at the wrong time. So timing is important, but I think in terms of tone, I always ask my couples, as they're talking to each other, they're telling me, I'll ask them, you notice that when you said that just now, it just came out just a little sarcastic? They say, no, I didn't notice that. And that's the reason why I'm here, right? Because sometimes when we talk to our spouses over so many years or months, right, you think, we're used to both of us talking. But I think that's the problem. We get so used to each other that we think, you understand, right? But sometimes damage is already done. Like, I want to understand, but why should I understand why you're being so sarcastic? And maybe that person is not meaning to be sarcastic at all. I don't think I mean that way when, sometimes I may speak to my husband that way. So I really appreciate it when he would say, you notice the tone just now was just not so great when you said it that way. And I have to freely admit to you, at times you will get defensive, right? What do you mean by my tone? And then that just escalates into another fight, if it started with another fight. Catch yourself. I always tell myself, let's not let it snowball. So this one thing happened with the tone. 20 minutes later, we're fighting about 3 years ago. And from your laughter, I know it's happened before. So I call this a snowball effect when you're doing the bowling thing. Let's stick to, right now, this 20 minutes. Because if I add 3 years ago, then how about 5 years ago? Then after that, at the beginning, on the day of the wedding, something happened, right? And by the time you're done is this bunch of things that you're fighting. And after 5 hours of not eating, just fighting, probably not sleeping, at the end of 5 hours, you think, so what did we start fighting about, right? Yeah. So one other thing I always tell my couples is, you stop yourself at that point once you're doing the 3 years ago, 10 months ago, yesterday, and you say, okay, wait, what is it we started talking about? Oh, just now. Okay, let's come back. So it's a nice reminder, I think, for both the partners, the spouses, to come back and say, let's just stick to what's going on right now. Of course, if someone says, but that happened last week? Say, but last week is last week, right? We need to promise each other that what happened before this, we won't talk about it. Oh, but I was upset last week. Then you should have brought it up last week. And of course, that does not help sometimes to tell the person, then you should have brought it up last week. So you say, yeah, but if we talk about last week, then where do we stop? Right? And you don't want to carry on this way either, because then it just builds up the bitterness. So every time there's a conflict that happens, and let's face it, conflicts are going to happen, right? Let's not pretend. Marriage is great, but there are times this is going to happen. So I always share with them, you don't want to avoid the conflict. So what I mean by that, before you think, oh, she's telling us to just go home and fight. No. We are going to have differences because it's two different people, right? You work, you are friends, and you already know that there are differences as long as you are someone else. So how is this going to be any less challenging? So there are differences. I would say not to avoid the fact that it's different and that we are different, but to try and work through the differences. You've heard this many times before, I'm sure. So how exactly do you do that? You got to know what the differences are, I think, in the first place. So this is not just which end of the toothpaste that you are, or what kind of curries you both like, or the spice level. It's a lot more than that. But those things are important too. What kind of spice level you like in the curry and how you like it with yogurt, without yogurt, right? That's important. So how do you talk about these things? The other thing I found was this C. You clarify and you try not to confront. I notice that sometimes when couples come in and they're telling me what happened, right? This is an incident. The tone is one thing. The second thing that happened is we needed to talk about it. I said, yeah, sure. But how do you talk about it? So it sounds like they put on their armor, took out all the weapons and stood there and said, let's talk about this. Does that sound like I want to talk to you about anything? So it sounds more like a confrontation, no? Yes. Okay, yeah. There's a double mic going on.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's falling.
No problem. Thank you so much, though. Is this better? Now I feel like I need to sing. Yeah? Sorry, I make fun of things a lot. I tend to be that way, so. So like I was saying, so in terms of confronting, clarifying, again, the tone becomes super important in talking about things. So if I want to try and understand, I think my partner, my husband, it's the way I ask him questions about why he does something. Simple things like, just thinking of an example, loading the washing machine, right? I know I'm talking about really simple domestic examples because it doesn't have to be big problems. It starts small, right? And then it just builds up. I can keep it to myself and keep doing it my way, which I think is the right way. Why? Because I'm usually the one who does laundry. But then if he doesn't ever learn to do it a different way, right? And I keep doing it, he starts to feel that he's not getting it right. So nobody talks about this, For months this carries on, right? One day, I'm tired, like let's say I'm at work, I come back pretty late. He has to do the laundry, no choice. And it's not done my way, right? Big fight happens, right? How come it's done like this? And he says, so it doesn't matter that I did the laundry, but it wasn't done your way. I say, yes, because this is the way to do it. Sometimes when you listen to me, you'll wonder whether I seriously am a psychologist, because there are times when I listen to myself and I go, come on. But that happens because, one, I never asked him what is the way he does it and why he does it that way. And we didn't have a conversation about why I do the washer this way. And if I cannot be there to hang up the wash, maybe it's time I let go, right? So that comes to the second C, which is control. I think it was about me controlling how I did my household chores. So you're thinking, but look, this is a man who wants to help you out with household chores. What is your problem? The problem is, before getting married, when I'm on my own, so I'm an only child, grew up with just mom and dad at home, I did things myself, my way, right? I didn't have to ask my brother or sister, like, is this okay? It was my room, I cleaned it, mom was okay with it, and that's fine. So when you start to live with someone else, your habits are no longer your habits, isn't it? So I have to then remember that I'm sharing a space with someone, not just the space, but part of his life as well, and as he is doing with me. So he comes with a family of, so there's 3 of them, all sons, right? 3 brothers. And he cooks and cleans, and that's what he does. I am not used to that. So again, never had that conversation about what exactly he can do and what he wants to do and why maybe he does things a certain way. But I just got used to the fact that this is just the way I do it. But when I'm not home and I can't do it, and I'm at work thinking the laundry is not done, because why am I thinking that? I'm thinking he's not going to do it. He did do it, just not the way I would have done it. So something as simple as that can become a conflict if it's not about just clarifying and just the fact that, you're adjusting to the fact that it's a couple thing now, you're sharing space, right? So I don't have to control everything. And I think it's not even about control. It's just, if this is our house, we've got to figure out how to share things and be practical, because I am not going to be there to try and get things done 24/7. It's just not that way anymore for some of us who have to go out to work and come back. And it's nice to have someone at home who wants to help, right? And I should not then stop him from helping and then say he's not helping. You know what I mean? So then that becomes me, I think, not allowing my husband to do things to contribute to the marriage. And that's hard on him. Same if it was for me as well. So you clarify, you don't confront, letting go of control. And I think understanding that it's not about control, but it's about sharing how you do things. So coping with stress in a way that's helpful. And I think coping with stress is something both partners should talk about individually as well. For the simple reason that my way of coping with stress could be very different from his. And I don't have to follow him. He doesn't have to follow me as well. But if I don't individually take care of my stress level and I take it home, you know what that looks like, right? So there's a lot of stress that comes home from both of our sides, and that's not so great. So as I'm talking about this, we probably want to also talk about a little bit about why do conflicts happen in the first place? Why do we sometimes talk to each other in a way that's hurtful, right? The person may not mean to hurt. And here's where it gets a little gray, I think, is what I want to say. So why do people talk the way they talk? So this is the part where it gets a bit like psychological in the sense that, pardon if I mean like talking about childhood. I'm not pinpointing to any childhood, nor am I blaming our parents. They do the best they can. But a lot of times, a tone that I might take on is something I've learned from somewhere, right? We call it social learning, which I can do in school and I do at home. So if I grow up in a home where I've seen either my mom or dad, doesn't even matter, or my grandma, my grandpa, anybody, speak in a way that's more sarcastic, slightly more critical, and that's all I see, I may start to think that it's okay, right? It's okay to sound like that. I don't want to hurt anyone, yeah? I need us to understand that, but it's a normal thing. So it becomes normal in my head to talk like that. And I end up talking like that to, say, colleagues. But you know who gets the worst of that? My husband. And you have to ask yourself, if you are working, do you bring home the best of you or the rest of you? There are days when only the rest of you trickles home because the best of you is all done outside, right? It's a bad day. I have those days. That's another thing to also watch out. So what do I do? On a very bad day, and when I say bad day, it's like back-to-back, clients, I teach as well at night. So if I've had all that, between coming home and being home, I take a break for myself to either go for a walk, and I'll tell him, of course, not just disappear for hours, right? I'll tell my husband that I'm outside, and I'm just taking a time out for myself. So what I'm doing is collecting the best of me and bringing it home through the gate so that he sees the best of his wife, and it's not just the remnants that he gets at home, because the remnants are not going to help in a marriage. You also know that. And that's also something I think that's responsible to do for myself, my stress coping, right? And it's good for the marriage and it's good for our relationship. So that's one thing. So why else would someone perhaps not know how to communicate? So like I was saying, it's social learning. It could be that they are exposed to something like that. Another thing that might happen is sometimes there are certain types of personality types that we have. All of us have those personality types. It's just, if the spectrum is, say, 0 to 100, it's just where all of us are dancing, I always call it. So if there's a particular type of personality I probably have, I just don't know where I am. So then you're probably thinking, that's scary. If all of us are on that personality spectrum, then what are we supposed to do about it? I think it's to find out where I am. So if this is me, I would say, okay, if I'm here, I need to be aware of those personality traits that I might have, right? So let's say my husband says, there's something about the way you're saying that doesn't seem quite right. It seems like it might be this type of personality, right? I need to go read up. You don't have to be a psychologist for that. And just say, oh, okay, where am I? And if I am displaying certain of those traits, I think it's my responsibility to him and myself to go and get help and say, I just want to speak about whether I have these traits and how they are affecting the way I'm communicating with my husband, right? So when I was thinking about, talking today and talking to you, there were lots of different ways we could have gone, I think, and we kept thinking, what way do we want to address this? Because marriage and marital challenges are such an important thing to talk about. But I also don't want to come in here and tell you that, yeah, it's bad, things happen, and it's just going to be sad and tears. I don't think you want that on a Saturday morning. And you don't need that, because it's not bad. It's good, and it can be as good as it can be. But when the little bit of bad stuff happens, I think it's how to navigate the bad spots out and try and keep this as nice and pleasant as possible. Say, like this little red carpet. How do I keep the blemishes as minimal as I can. So I figured more helpful to perhaps not just talk to you about it, but also have you maybe ask me things about literally navigating the marital challenges. So also was thinking about that this morning on the way here, and I thought navigating is such a good word because it reminds me of a ship, navigating the seas. So I had my own ship, right? It's Padma Jairam's ship. Been navigating it for years before getting married. After getting married, it's a different ship. So it's not Padma's ship, it's not Paul's ship, it's now a joint ship. We have to then build the ship together, don't you think? And then we have to figure out how everything works in this ship. So there's a little bit of experience I bring from Padma's ship, and then he's going to bring from Paul's ship. We're going to put this together, but at times I will say, no, but this used to work for Padma's ship really well, so I'm not going to change this anymore. And he'll probably see the same thing as well. We have that conversation too many times. And then what do? Sometimes, if you really don't feel like you want to get into that discussion, can I please suggest a timeout? Like kids have timeouts, right? Sometimes they do something that you're not very happy with, and you say, okay, just 5 minutes. The same thing is helpful in a marriage too. I always have friends who say, but isn't it good to talk? Like talk? Yes, it is. But if you're talking, it's good. If you're shouting, or you're doing the silent treatment, that's not so good, right? So instead of standing like this and just standing away, silent treatment, I might just tell him, I'm a bit upset, so I'm just going to take 5 minutes outside, right? And just telling him that makes him understand that I'm not walking away from the relationship, but I'm walking away from this problem and what it's doing to me. So I need to go outside and take whatever time out I can and then come back in and say, okay, let's talk about this, sharing the work thing. You're probably thinking, that's all great. But in the moment when you tell me to walk away from it, I probably won't remember because I am so angry. You're right. So can we remember? So I always call this the scale that I have, whether it's anxiety, whether it's anger, anything. I need to know Padma's scale for upset. So 0 to 10. I need to know which is the point of no return for me. Point of no return doesn't sound so bad. Don't worry about it. All it means is the point of no return is where I'm in the middle of just shouting. I'm fighting straight on. It's World War, right? I need to understand 0 to 10. Is it 8? Is it 7? And if it is, what does Padma look like when she's at the point of no return? Like, is she just, I don't throw things, so just, I might get very quiet. So I need to know my signs of when I'm getting there. So if 8 is my point of no return, where I can't stop now, I've got to go full on and then done, right? I need to stop myself at 6. I'm not even going to wait until 7.5. 7.5, 0.5, too late, because that something can just throw me off and I'm there. So I need to say, what does 6 look like? And catch myself at 6. So if I feel that I'm starting to do that with my face, right? I'm starting to roll my eyes, then okay, that's my 6. And I need to tell my husband, I'm just going to go out there, I'm on a 6, right? He knows what that means because we've had that conversation about Padma scale and Paul scale, right? You don't have to share that with anyone else on Instagram. Just the two of you need to know about it, right? So this is not something where I suggest, putting it out there and saying, oh my God, Facebook posts, which is the next thing I want to come to, super important. So that's another conversation that I have. You don't have to do scales if you don't like it, but I think what I'm trying to say is knowing yourself. Before I get to know him, I need to know where I am first. And I need to know what's going on for me and what are my ups and downs and what are my, I think, flaws in that sense in the way I communicate, right? And then I can get to know him. So here's the Facebook part of it, right? So you're thinking, oh, she's just going to say, stop Facebooking altogether, Instagramming. No, please don't stop. Please don't stop. I just have one slight request with that. Marriage is no one size fits all. I know that, right? So why do we get on Facebook and Instagram and look at other people's pictures and say, why is my life not like this? Why do we do that? So that's, I think, I'm not blaming Facebook or Instagram because I don't think it's a fault of an app or a social media platform. It's how we use it, right? If you have pictures, and obviously I think people are mostly going to post pictures of good stuff. Anyone ever posted a very sad picture? It doesn't happen very often, right? So people are going to post the best of what's happening in their lives. Nothing wrong with that. If we are able to look at those pictures and go, that's nice, great. But if you go, that's nice, and you say, so we don't have that, when are we going to get that as well? That's the problem, right? Because then all of a sudden, what was okay till 20 seconds ago has now become inadequate. The problem with the inadequate is it's not really inadequate, is it? Actually, everything was just fine, right? But suddenly you saw this post, and because that's the way you started the morning, now the rest of the day is dependent on how this post is affecting your lives, right? So I see you're smiling and thinking, yes, okay. So you can relate to what I'm saying. The social media is a very powerful, I think, influence if we let it influence us. I'm a coward. I don't have Instagram. I am not on Facebook personally, so there's a page there. It was active when I was in Canada because I was keeping in touch with my family here, but it's done now. I don't do anything with it. I say I'm a coward because I don't feel like I want to have that extra stress of managing, posts and things that come in. Because whether I'm a psychologist or not, I'm human too. So the rest of the time when I'm not talking to my clients, I also need to figure out what's going on for me. So I try not to give myself added stress and whatsoever with social media. But if you are on it, just go ahead and be on it, but be very clear of, I think, that's that, and this is my reality. And that does not have to become my reality. Maybe there's something there that's nice that we can both talk about and see if we want it for ourselves. But if we don't like it, and they have it, that's fine. Well and good for them, not really for us. Yeah, so talking is always good if you're talking. If you're talking with each other, always the best. If you're talking at each other, not so great. Difference being the tone, right? So talking with each other is us having a conversation, and it's mostly pleasant. But if it's talking at each other, all I'm doing is just throwing words at the person, right? And I think talking at each other is also, it's condescending, and it's also quite disrespectful if you can see it that way. So not quite helpful. So talk, yes, sometimes no need to talk, right? You take a time out, and if you have to, go for it. Let's talk about kids for a bit, because I think kids are part of the family too. And if you have children, they are part of that relationship too, and they shouldn't be neglected. But it's tough to navigate the different roles you have in your life. You are wife, you are husband, you are somebody's son, daughter, sister, brother, colleague, boss, mom, dad, right? In that same household, how many roles are you playing? If you're working from home as well, how many extra roles are you playing, right? So navigating challenges also means navigating the roles. This is tough because there's no 5-step program to it. It's not like I tell you, step 1, this role, step 2, that role. It doesn't. Sometimes it overlaps, right? In the morning, if you're getting ready for breakfast, mom, wife, everything comes in together. Daughter, right? All may come together. So you're asking, how the hell do I do that? You do that by recognizing that you take one role at a time if you can. So you're preparing breakfast, you prepare breakfast. So if I was doing it, I'm preparing breakfast as Padma, right? We don't have kids. I've always considered my ex-students as my kids. I call them kids even though they're in their 30s right now with kids of their own. So that's how it is for me. I prepare what I do as me for the different people at home. If there's something that
somebody else needs differently done. I think for your kids, it could be different from your hubby, sort of different sort of breakfast. If mom is there, they could have different. So the foods are different, right? The preparation may differ, but you are the same. You are still the person who's getting up in the morning, putting food on the table for your loved ones. And that's all that needs to be remembered. So sometimes you're wearing different hats. And those hats, when you have too many of them and you've got this many hats, head gets a little heavier than usual. You might get a neck ache, literally, right? So if you can, after breakfast, if you have the time, kids are back in school, you take that cap off just for a while. Mom can rest. Because maybe at that time, IT extraordinaire needs to get onto the job and meetings, right? So that cap needs to come on. So if you can you feel how heavy your head is and how many caps you're wearing? And if you can take off some of the hats, you take it off for a while so that this one gets to rest. Why am I so insistent on that? If this one is heavy, all of this is heavy, guess who's going to get the brunt of the heaviness? You guessed it, this poor man at home that I have to go home to. So I'm always about, I need the best of me to roll home, not the rest and the fragments of me that come. Yeah? Does that make sense so far? Okay. I'm just looking at the time. Got 10 minutes left. Thinking of what else I want to share with you. Success stories. Yes, I think they were asking me for success stories. So if you're wondering what counseling in say, the setting outside in private counseling services looks like and how many sessions or things like that, I've had couples who come in for one session, done, they leave. I've got couples who come in for a few sessions. So this is how I roll that, I conduct counseling for couples. To me, if you come together first, we deal about what's going on for you, and then after that, I start suggesting to see them individually. So I might see the husband individually, I might see the wife individually, because let's not pretend, it's not half and half one, right? It's 1 + 1. So if I want to help two, I must do 1 + 1. So I got to talk to the husband, find out what's going on for him, which would have come up during the first session anyway. Got to talk to the wife, what's coming up for her. And then I'll ask them, is this okay for you to tell husband, wife, when we come together again? So we do individual, we come back together, and they get to talk about what. So the thing that doesn't happen here is me getting in between that. So then you're thinking, then what do you do? I'm facilitating. I am that person who's the outsider, right, with training in facilitating and obviously looking at psychological issues, who's listening to this conversation, trying to tell them, do you realize that when you say this, this might be how she sees it or he sees it? And you're thinking, yeah, but that's easy, right? I mean, of course they see it. Well, that's the problem. Sometimes it takes an outsider looking in to have the 360 perspective. And that's what your therapist or counselor is supposed to do. That 360 perspective, because I have no hidden agenda with this couple. I'm not related to them, I don't know them, and this is why you shouldn't do counseling for friends, because this is hard, and especially for family, right? So they are there, they are here for me to listen to their story, and for me to help them make sense of that story. And to do that, I need to listen to the individual stories, because at some point before they got married, these were individual people. They still are. So something that happened in the childhood, I'm a big believer that what happened in the past, in that sense, has some, obviously, presence in my life today. And if I don't address what happened there, I can't move forward. And that's really what counseling is. So I don't hold secrets for the couple, which I think is very important, because I'm not part of that marriage, and I shouldn't be. So I always tell them, don't tell me something and say, please don't tell her. I'm not going to do that, because if I start doing that for either of them, then who's the counselor? What are they paying money for, to come here and talk to me and have me solve the problem with them and for them? So sometimes it's about teaching them and then letting them run off and say, try this and let me know how it works. I don't have this fixed sessions kind of thing, because I don't believe everyone needs the same number of sessions. Sometimes you just need to talk to someone else for 90 minutes and then go back with that and say, oh, okay, yeah, let's try that and see what happens. The idea is to give what they need for as long as they need. I'm happiest if they don't come back because that means they're okay. You're probably thinking, then how do you sustain your business like that if you're happy that people don't come back? It's like being a doctor, isn't it? You're happiest when they don't come back, right? But for while you are there and they need help, I'm here. But at some point, if they don't need me, I have got to feel good about it, and I do. And if that means one day I have no work, I'll just have to think of the next profession, which is the fourth one. No, I'm kidding. So that's sort of, I think, what I wanted to share about marriage and family and all of that. So kids, as I was saying, the last but the most important part, when they see us fight, they pick up a lot. So does that mean I shouldn't fight? It happens, right? But if you can help it, maybe talk, right? Because we're not going to fight anymore, right? After today, we're going to talk, right? So if you're going to talk, then at least let them, if the kids are old enough, let them know, Mama and Papa are just going to have a conversation, okay? Don't worry about anything. We just need to talk because we want to focus on it. So at least they don't get alarmed because they pick up your body language so quickly. Really, really young kids. And they know something is wrong. If something is wrong in our world, something is wrong in their world. Because their worlds are so intertwined with our worlds, especially when the kids are really young. But it's hard on you because you're a parent, you're a spouse, and you're an individual. And when those three things collide, what do? Right? Of course, you break apart, you explode, but that's what I'm saying. So this is the time for the three hats, for you to lay them out and say, at this point, I need the mama role to be KIV'd for a while, so I need to tell them, I'm just going to be right there with your papa, that's all, okay? But we'll be right back after talking. So they know, okay, so it's not anything bad, but at least they're talking. But if I don't even start that way, and my volume goes up, and they can feel it, then they'll think, oh, this is the norm. As soon as mama's volume goes up, we're done. And there's something that starts to build in our kids, this small thing called trauma that just builds up. I hate it when that happens because then I see the children grow up into adults with trauma issues, and that's difficult. Not so much for me, but I think it's so hard for that person to go through. So I think in that sense, if we can minimize the harm to our kids, I'm not saying we harm them on purpose, but if we talked, clarified, understood, didn't control as much, maybe it will help our kids grow up in as optimal an environment as possible. That's all I'm saying. Yeah? That's it. Thank you.